listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you, and welcome to The Briefing. It feels like every week we're learning about a new hack or data breach. Last week it was our super, the week before that our country's biggest court database, and who could forget Optus and Medibank. And with every new cyber attack and breach, it feels like we're caring less and less because most of us aren't seeing the impacts firsthand. But apparently it's not just our passwords and pet names at risk. My chat with a convicted hacker turned good guy is coming up in the second half of this ep. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru. It's Wednesday, April the 9th.
Morning, Tara. Morning, everybody. And morning to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who no doubt has a little pep in his step this morning after winning his first leaders' debate against Peter Dutton last night. The two leaders went head-to-head in a town hall-style debate in Western Sydney, hosted by Sky News and the Daily Telegraph. And of the 100 undecided voters in the room, 44 said the PM won the debate, 35 said the opposition leader, while 21 remain undecided. Now, there were no knockout blows, Tara, and to be honest, it was a relatively not spicy debate at all, to be honest with you. There was a lot of focus on policies and issues we've already heard along the campaign trail. Of course, the cost of living, migration, education and housing were the top priorities for a lot of the people in the room who were asking the questions. Unsurprisingly, there were plenty of accusations of lying, both leaders accusing the other of manipulating narratives around funding, timelines and scare campaigns, especially when it came to things like hospitals and schools.
Now, the Prime Minister might say it should have gone up by more. That's fine for him to say that. But to say that the funding was cut, and you can go and have a look at the budget papers, that is not a factually correct statement. It's misleading, it's designed to scare people, and I think it's dishonest from a man who wants to be re-elected as the Prime Minister of our country.
Well, Kieran, it is a fact. It is in the 2014 budget papers.
And while they were quizzed on all the challenges facing everyday Australians, the audience also turned to things globally, including the war in Gaza and what one member called the Trump pandemic.
Yeah, and that was in reference to Trump's tariffs, where Albo said that while things are uncertain right now, he reminded the audience that apparently Australia got the best deal of any country under him. Dutton said he'd have done better though. Both sides backed funding public schools, but then tussled, as we heard, over who cut funding when, then disagreed over student migration, the current housing crisis, and how much the two are linked. Albo says his $33 billion housing plan will do the trick. Dutton was going hard, saying, not even close. He claims there's more international students coming here than the population of Adelaide, which he says is hindering young Aussies' home ownership dream, Chris.
Yeah, and look, the voters in the room went with Albo. A lot of journalists last night came out to call who they said won. And interestingly, it was a mixed bag. A lot of journos said that it was a draw. Some said that Dutton won. Some said that Albo won. And look, for me, if it was based purely on zingers, Anthony Albanese, our Prime Minister, took out a massive win.
Well, the only gas policy that the coalition have is the gaslighting of the Australian public.
Yes. So that's him there talking about the coalition's plan to free up gas reserves and force gas suppliers to distribute gas into this country before sending it offshore.
And look, I'm interested to hear that, Chris, because I actually disagree with you to give my own bit of critical analysis. I found it really interesting watching Albo and seeing that he won the votes last night, because I actually went in thinking that I might side with him by the end, as I have in previous debates, because I think he usually delivers them really well. But I didn't feel that last night. Watching even his opening address, I think what Albo didn't do well was acknowledge what Aussies are going through right now and how much they're doing it really tough. He didn't empathise the way that Dutton did, who went really hard with the crowd. And I think he did that better in that respect. He acknowledged their personal challenges a lot better. And I felt the reality of what Australians are feeling right now, instead of trying to put a positive spin on everything constantly, which is obviously a strategy, as it would mean having to kind of admit fault in some way. And that was, I think, Albo's fault. But where Dutton fell, and it should be mentioned, his dad actually suffered a medical episode, reportedly a heart attack, right before this debate, which is really awful, and everyone obviously hopes that he's okay. But due to that, many people were expecting him to be off his game. But he wasn't, I don't think. I think he was quite strong last night. But the faults with him and the party lied, I would say, are still the lacking policy policies. The Labor Party have, in my opinion, delivered stronger policies which do address the day-to-day issues Aussies are facing better. Without something really strong, I think that's where Dutton and the LNP are falling. The fuel excise is strong, but only there for a year, as was pointed out last night, and them walking back two of their major policies this early in the campaign was a blunder in itself because it shows they were off the mark and they know it. And so performance last night, I think it was Dutton in my opinion, but overall policies to date, yeah, it's Albo.
Taking us out of all things political debating, let's get into something we love talking about, house prices. And Tara Cassidy, they've jumped by 39% in the last 5 years. The median value of an Australian home now $230,000 more valuable than it was 5 years ago. That's from new data by CoreLogic, which also shows the price of an average home is up from 4.6 times the median Aussie income in 2001 to a record high of 8, essentially confirming what we already knew, the very, very grim reality that a price of a home is rising way faster than our incomes.
Yes, and as for the most unaffordable capital city, that is, of course, Sydney. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yep.
With the housing values 9.8 times higher than incomes there, followed by Adelaide on 9, and then regional New South Wales on 8.9, and Brizzy, where I am, at 8.2. Now, CoreLogic says that the growth in values seen over the past 5 years reflects strong underlying housing demand, tight supply, and a relatively resilient economy.
Yeah, and just on resilience, I know I said we're taking us out of politics and stuff, but Treasurer Jim Chalmers has taken himself off the election campaign this week to hold a series of high-level talks with the RBA, the big banks and key industry groups to discuss the fallout from Trump's trade war and market volatility. Yesterday, meeting with the Reserve Bank's governor, the CEO of the Big Four, the chairs of the ACCC, ASIC and the ASX, and today he'll be meeting with the Business Council of Australia, who represents our country's largest employers. It comes amid growing pressure to lower the interest rate ahead of the RBA's meeting next month.
Meta is expanding its teen account protections to Facebook and Messenger while cracking down on some Instagram features. Users under the age of 16 will no longer be able to access Instagram Live or view explicit images in their DMs without parental permission. It was in September last year the tech giant rolled out its special teen accounts on the app, which will soon hit Facebook, and limits who can contact them, the type of content they receive, and the amount of time they spend on the platforms.
Yeah, Meta says it's about offering an age-appropriate experience that parents can always opt their children out of, with the changes to be first rolled out in Australia, the US, UK and Canada over the next few months. Interestingly, Meta put out its report announcing these new changes, and they said that 97% of teens aged 13 to 15 who have signed up for these teen accounts. So once you put your birthday in, you automatically are set up as a teen account. They say 97% of those have kept their default settings. So their parents or they haven't opted out of it, which is a really interesting finding.
To Queensland now, where the findings from a 2-year investigation into what caused the deadly mid-air SeaWorld helicopter crash are due to be handed down today. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau expected to deliver its final report into what caused the fatal collision in January 2023 that claimed the lives of 4 people, including the pilot, a British couple and a Sydney mother. An interim report released last year revealed the pilot had traces of cocaine in his system, but noted it was unlikely the drug level would have impaired the pilot's skills. Today's final report will include analysis of all of the evidence, the findings, and any recommended safety actions from it.
And a US startup reckon they've brought back an animal that's been extinct for 13,000 years, Tara Cassidy, the dire wolf. So bear with me. Why this is cool for non-science nerds and buffs and why we're kind of running this story is because apparently it's the white wolf from Game of Thrones. Colossal, which is this US startup, claimed they've successfully de-extincted the dire wolves through genetic modification, saying they've welcomed the birth of 3 pups, and it even made a front cover of Time magazine. This story has gone absolutely wild and global.
Yeah, I've seen it everywhere, and oh my gosh, the pups are so cute. They've put photos up everywhere, and like you said, yeah, it's on Time. It's on nearly every news outlet across the globe at the moment. But Some scientists are actually pouring cold water on the claims, saying not to buy into the hype, Chris. Apparently, the creator of the series Game of Thrones is actually an investor in the company, which would explain a lot. But also, other scientists are now biting back, saying what they've done is not bring back the dire wolf at all. Rather, all they've done is just genetically modify a grey wolf to produce light coats to look like dire wolves.
Oh, God.
I mean, what is the old adage? Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. But the fact this has gone everywhere. I mean, it's still really cool. White wolves, they're awesome. They're beautiful. The pups are gorgeous. But it's not bringing them back from the dead. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm just stoked that, the scientists have come out to cast a little bit of doubt on it all, which brings us perfectly to your deep dive, Tara Cassidy. You're speaking to a hacker turned good guy who's talking about all the ways that we in Australia are vulnerable to a hack, and it's not in the ways that you might think.
It sounds like something from a spy or dystopian movie, even an online conspiracy thread. Spies and foreign agents living among us, looking for ways to disrupt our way of life. But according to convicted hacker turned good guy, future crime researcher Skeeve Stevens, that's exactly the case. He spends his days thinking up all the ways that both foreign and domestic threats might try and dismantle our cities. Something he says, if happened, even our military wouldn't have a shot in the dark at protecting us against. He joins me now. Skeeve, thanks so much for chatting to us again on The Briefing. Let's kick things off with how easy would it be for someone like yourself to switch off a whole city?
I feel like I shouldn't really talk about some of these things. No, it's not that complicated to mess with the electricity grid if you knew where and how to hit. I did a presentation for a counter-terrorism conference a few years ago, and it was basically how to take out Sydney. And we're talking electricity, water supplies, international long-haul fibre cables out of the country, connectivity between data centres, airports. Those cascade into taking out most critical infrastructure. And most major cities sit on top of a few key critical points. You take out electricity, you're taking out a bulk of the main city, obviously. So these are things that are not that hard to do if you know where to hit.
How does this all then come into play when it comes to talking about modern warfare? And if you can explain to us what that is and why we're preparing for it.
So modern warfare in the context of a current today city like Sydney is quite complicated in that our militaries are not designed or trained to fight in big cities. It's very, very difficult for them, whether they are the defender or the attacker. Modern warfare is basically using all the technology available. At the moment, we are dealing constantly with things like hacking attacks. So there are actually quite a number of people around the world, but even in Australia and Sydney, that get together on a regular basis to figure out how to assist the wars that are ongoing in the Ukraine, with Israel and other conflict areas. We see in the news occasionally those people that get together and fight for a foreign force. You don't have to kind of do that now if you have the skills. So we know about groups like Anonymous, but there are other groups that are out there that specifically doing cyber warfare and defending and attacking all the time. So, but besides the actual corporates defending their own networks, the modern warfare using Internet of Things, which an Internet of Thing is any device that has an IP address that can be changed or controlled or manipulated. So when modern warfare happens, let's say a foreign entity or a foreign state actor wants to attack us, we are quite vulnerable. So everything from our farms, because we used to have many people running a big farm. Now we've got 2 people running a farm with thousands of cattle because they're using humidity sensors, detectors, all these different kinds of things that turn on watering systems and keep a farm running in the many, many ways that they need to know. There's even sensors about so big that you can actually put inside cows to tell, are they well, unwell. Now, if you start to hack infrastructure that can take out our food supply, and there's many areas, and we don't have a lot of people in cybersecurity that specialize then in agriculture, aquaculture, or many of those things, then you can destabilize any country when you take out their infrastructure. So this is the thing that we need to think about. People don't realize that on a daily basis that foreign actors or hackers are trying to attack us, and they're going after things like the Optus and the Medicare and all the different other infrastructures that have a lot of information about us.
And aside from major infrastructure, what are some of those devices the everyday Australian might not think about that could be hacked? We know about phones and laptops and even some of our smart fridges, but what else can come into the mix?
I guess it's one of those things where it's anything that has an IP address. There are many things that connect into Apple and sort of Android infrastructure that can be hacked. So an example, but a lot of people don't really understand. My house has a lot of technology. I've got over 240 different things, from the power adapters, the phones, everything in this place is controlled from my air conditioning systems to my front door locks to what else is here? I've got cameras. If you can see and control things, then you can, to a certain point, affect people's lives. We are to a point where some people are, especially in the United States, they even have things like Alexa, we're talking Amazon here, Alexa-friendly microwaves, ovens, and a lot of different appliances like that. Now, if they have the ability to turn temperature up and down, then they have the ability to potentially be hacked. We're getting more and more and more of those all the time. And just as we go along, I mean, just go down to your local Bunnings. They have hundreds of devices from, my simple light globes here have an IP address and are connected to the Wi-Fi and are individually controlled. I can log into my phone right now and go, turn that one on, turn that one off. So every device from fans and aircons, you name it, are coming out with IP addresses now. So you can mess with people's infrastructure and their houses quite easily. It just depends how advanced they are.
What about like on the person? What about like life and death things like a pacemaker, insulin pump?
So those are hackable. Now, this is the problem with medical technology. I've done research, this is a couple of years ago now, but I figured out how to hack a pacemaker. I jumped onto eBay and bought one for $150. That was an old one. And the thing is, they do their job perfectly, keeping someone alive. But these aren't cybersecurity people. These things are configured by wireless or Bluetooth or whatever, different things like that. I worked with cochlear implants, and I had a friend who had one. And I said to him, do you mind if I try to do a few different things? And he was like, sure. And I said, how about this? And I just, tapped it. And then it just set this piercing sound and took him to the ground. The other one that I didn't like was a diabetic insulin pump, where normally a diabetic will look at it, look at the level, and then choose their insulin. We could hack the insulin pump and make it say whatever we wanted to, which could essentially, if they looked at it and went, oh no, hang on, push, they could overdose and they could potentially kill themselves. With all of those things and the technology that keeps going, yes, there are as many of those things which could be hacked. And you just think how much things you've got these days, from my watch, which is smart, to my headsets that are smart. If I'm on my motorcycle, my helmet's smart. Like, everything is smart these days.
We said the words modern warfare. When we talk about war, many people would envisage people arriving on boats or planes, guns, that kind of thing. But that's not really what we're talking about at all, is it? If we went to war in the way we're speaking about, are there people here already acting on this?
I've done a few joint task forces with the military a few years ago, and we were talking and we theorised, did a lot of gamification of going, what would we do? What could we do? What could be done to us? Every country of any significance with interests has representatives in each country, which always includes a few spies doing this and that, probably to keep an eye on dissidents, especially China and things like that. So those people are here. Now, while back in the day they might do different things like that we see in the movies, and there's a lot of those sort of things that are quite easy to do, that at any point you could just go tap, 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 and there's 500 devices in a mesh around a city or a particular key location or something like Canberra, where you could turn it on and it's just jamming, say, Wi-Fi or 2.4 Bluetooth, which causes a lot of other things like that. And that's going to cause absolute chaos in many areas.
Now, you were talking about more widespread vulnerabilities, as you put it. Why were incidents like the global CrowdStrike outage so critical in sectors like yours, and what did it expose? The
CrowdStrike problem was simply a typo in a configuration file that was widely distributed that took out a lot of things. The fact that it was a typo and it was an accident was problematic. To me, all that told to every bad actor out there was, what else sits on a large amount of things that are kind of critical? It could be building automation or something else. What point do we have to specifically attack that would take out globally or locally a certain thing? Let's say you wanted to go after a certain area and you're like, okay, so what internet connection, what wire do we have to cut to take out all the cameras or all the things like that? Because we don't do a lot of redundancy in these things. We build a lot of things like that, a lot of things that are critical to our day. People couldn't fly anywhere. People couldn't pay for their groceries at Coles and Woolworths and places like that. There was so much that stopped functioning because they used this particular software. And that's one of the things that I'm pretty sure that all the bad actors right now are looking around. What can we attack? What can we hit? Last weekend, all the superannuation companies were targeted. Now, that wasn't actually a hack. What they did is they used a lot of the old credentials from the Optus, the Medibank hacks, and they did a lot of specific attacking, just normal, you try and use passwords. And they got in onto a lot of things.
Skeeve, just very briefly to wrap up, I wanted to ask you if you could think of, say, 2 or 3 things to tell our listeners of relating to tech, what they should or shouldn't do. You mentioned something before about like remembering passwords. Have you got any tips for them that might help keep them protected?
Passwords, with things, simple passwords such as with birth dates and things like that, are okay-ish. If you, say, my birthday is 10th of December, if you put like hashtags, ampersands and things like that between them, if you've got a decent formula, and some of those are actually uncrackable. So stop using passwords that you have to put on a little post-it note on your screen because you're changing all the time. 2-factor authentication is very important these days. To get to my passwords that are stored on my phone, it's 2 biometrics and 2 different password levels just to even get to them. So there is, and this is not buying extra software. These are just features that are commonly available. The problem with the superannuation on the weekend was that the ones that got hit for actual transferring money, I think it was about $500,000 or more, was because they didn't have 2-factor authentication. And the government was immediately on them going, why don't you have like banking security? When I transfer money between different banks, I have to log into my phone, confirm it, give codes back and forwards. They're not invulnerable, but it's far harder for someone to intercept your SMS messages or other messages. And we're going to get better. Use that as much as you can, but anyone that ever rings you and asks you for anything, do not trust them.
Some really sage advice there for us. Thank you so much, Skeeve, for joining me again on The Briefing.
No problem, Tara.
That was future crime researcher and convicted hacker Skeeve Stevens speaking with me there about how prepared Australia is for modern warfare. There was a lot in this episode, but what surprised you the most? Send us a DM on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, leave us a comment on Spotify or a review on Apple to let us know. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. But don't forget, the afternoon edition with Natasha Belling will be in your feeds this arvo like always. And Chris Spiro and I will be back tomorrow morning with another dose of headlines and an interesting deep dive. I'm Tara Cassidy. See you next time.
Listener.